Location.
Okay. Erev Tov, everyone. So we were talking a little bit last night, based on the parasha, the pasuk of Lo Tasuni Iti, about the prohibition of making or retaining images of the sun, moon, stars, heavenly bodies. We're trying to justify the minhag of the Gananot to make models of the planets and the stars and sun and moon. And why is that permitted? So we said, just very briefly, essentially three directions of leniency. One was the opinion of the Maharam, who said, maybe is a minority opinion, but exists, who said that the issue would only be 3D, even if it's 2D, but if it's just a drawing she'ein bo mamashut, has nothing really to it, that would be allowed. That was what the Maharam said, and Rav Kook relied on that in order to justify the minhag. Or we said maybe there were those who understand that it's only when actually making those drawings in such a way that it's done as a way in order to worship Avodah Zarah. But if it's just a picture of the circles, the picture of the sun and the moon, then maybe not. And the third one, which we started talking about at the end, the most far-reaching leniency of this is when it's done for educational purposes. Right? And we saw the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah that spoke about Rabban Gamliel had these models of the moon in the different ways, of different shapes, and that was allowed because it was for the purpose of Kiddush HaChodesh. It was the purpose of La'avin v'la'orot, in order to understand, in order to teach, in order to paskin halacha. So the question was, how far does this idea of education go? Right? For what needs is it still going to be allowed? So we said for the purposes of Kiddush HaChodesh, for the purposes of paskining halacha, certainly that was clear, that's explicit in the Gemara. That was allowed. One was allowed to have those images or to have those models of the moon in the different shapes, etc. What about if it's for the purposes of learning, not for the purposes of practical halacha, but for the purposes of learning Torah? Shevet HaLevi has a question. Somebody wants to learn. The teacher is teaching about Yosef's dreams, so they want to have a picture of the stars, in Yosef's dream, or learning about the creation of the world. Right? Day 4, sun, moon, and stars. Picture. He doesn't mention this one explicitly, but maybe we could add, what if you're learning about Hashem's promise to Avraham Avinu, that his descendants will be like the stars in the sky? You want to see, you want to have the picture, you want to learn about it, understand what the Torah is talking about. So there's Shevet HaLevi. That is also considered educational purposes. That's considered La'avin La'orot. That would be permitted. That would be allowed. What if, taking it one step further, what if it is in order to learn, for purposes of chinuch, not in order to learn halacha, not in order to learn even machshava, not in order to learn what the Meiri calls Sifrei Tchuna. Sifrei Tchuna, which we would say, translated in our modern language, maybe astronomy, cosmology, etc. So there you're learning, again, not for the sake of Torah per se. I'm not getting now into the whole discussion and debate about the Torah attitude to secular studies or not, but the Meiri, who is very much in favor of learning those kinds of things, in order to understand about Hashem's world, and he says that would be permitted as well. So if you have images, you have a textbook of astronomy, it's got pictures of the stars, etc., that would also be allowed. It's based on also one of the poskim we have mentioned yesterday. Rav Kook said, in his shul, there were pictures on the ceiling of the different mazalot, and he tried very hard to justify that minhag, even though he thought that milakatchila wouldn't have been allowed. So it used to be that in the Machzorim, the Taz writes, and Shach discusses, Nekudat HaKesef. Shach wrote many books, but he wrote the Shach, and then there was the Taz, which was also a commentary, and the Taz attacks the Shach in a number of places. And then the Shach writes the Nekudat HaKesef, which is defending himself and answering back some of those questions. He writes there, again, to justify the minhag, that in the Machzorim there were pictures of the Mazalot. I don't know exactly what these pictures.
Talmud Geshem, they sometimes have on the sides. They have pictures.
Signs of the zodiac.
Yeah. So you have those pictures, and that seemingly that's signs of the zodiac. Those are pictures of the stars. Would that be permitted? So he says yes, it's permitted because it's for two reasons he gives. One of them is the fact that they are not complete pictures. I said yesterday, you have a partial image, that would be permitted. But also he says for educational purposes in order to learn, and that is okay. So different poskim take this in that direction as well. Where this would not extend, the Khatam Sofer was asked, okay, if you're talking about to learn, what if somebody is learning art? And somebody learning art and sculpture, and you'll say you can make the pictures, you can make the images. There, he's actually asked about making an image of a human body, making a sculpture. We said yesterday that the sun, moon, and stars actually are more stringent than images of people. So for the sun, moon, and stars, even if it's 2D, there's going to be a question here. For people, according to many poskim, 2D would be okay. 3D is more problematic. But the Khatam Sofer says we don't have this heter for art and for sculpture of learning. Learning we mean learning Torah or learning, even learning astronomy, as the Maariv says. But in terms of learning how to make the picture, which in itself is an issur, that he says is not okay. And he says if a person is learning art, doing a sculpture of a human form, so they should leave it incomplete. Leave it incomplete, leave the eye out, leave the hand out, or leave something out. Somebody else comes and fills it in. Okay, that's not your, but that's what he says. What about photographs? What about taking pictures, not making or not drawing, photographs of sun, moon, stars, etc. So if a person is taking a photo just of a scene and there happens to be the sun or the moon in the background, I was going to say a person doesn't have to worry to aim the camera so that you can't see the sun or the moon. That's not the focus. That would be okay. That would be permitted. But what if somebody wants to take a picture of the sunrise or sunset, and see the sun, the moon? Is that allowed? So again, yeah, you have to understand what exactly is the technology we're talking about. These things change so quickly. We're just talking about photos. So if you go and you look back in the poskim, right? Nowadays, if you want to take a photo, I mean, who still has a camera, right? You do it on your cell phone, but it's a digital photo. Going back not that long ago, taking photos was a completely different endeavor, right? We had film, you had to take the picture, you went to go and get it developed. I'm sure people here still remember this. I remember a few years back, we were having a discussion with one of my nephews. It's something about somebody had an old camera and said, you put in a film. And he looked at us and said, it's a film. And it was, you're around people, what are these things? So the truth is, there's probably a chumrah and a kula, both in terms of the old type of cameras and in terms of the new type of cameras. So the old type of cameras with the film. So Rav Wosner writes, the poskim say, a person took a picture. So you've taken a picture, and you'll remember this. You take the picture, you have no idea what it's going to look like until you go and you get it developed. What have you done? If you created a picture, there's a tiny, tiny image on a negative, but there's not really anything there. And therefore, he says, you haven't really done anything. You haven't taken a picture. There's no prohibition. The flip side to that is that when the person who is then developing the picture, who is then creating the picture, that in itself would be the problem. It would be a problem of lot azoniti. So if you go then you ask somebody to take that picture, that would either be a problem of lifnei iver, or if the person is not Jewish, it might be a problem of amira la'akum. But amira la'akum, also points out, is not just a prohibition that we have on Shabbat. Anything that we're not allowed to do, you can't necessarily go and ask a non-Jew to do it for you. This is extends throughout the Torah. So anyway, that's in terms of that. What about nowadays? We take a picture on a screen, you take a picture on a phone, on a computer screen or something like that. So let's get a little bit more lenient about this, because the picture that is on the screen is not really permanent. Doesn't have you take the picture and it's there, but then it goes away. This is a question actually which comes up just in terms of taking photos, but how permanent is the writing that we have on a screen? So the poskim discuss regarding Tiva and Shabbat. They discuss regarding if you have Hashem's name on the screen on your computer, right? When you close it, are you erasing? Is that something you need to be worried about? The truth is, we say that since it's not permanent, not erasing Hashem's name, it was never there permanently in the first place. Nowadays, maybe we'll talk about this another day, but nowadays with some of the new, the Kindles and the e-readers and things where the ink works on a very different technology, and there is something a lot more permanent about it. So there the question is asked, could you change the page? Is that a problem of erasing Hashem's name? If you were to do it on Shabbat, would that be a problem of erasing on Shabbat? There's a lot more ground to say that over there it is. But generally speaking, you have a screen which is switching every few seconds anyway, and that's there's nothing permanent in it. So that would be a grounds for leniency in terms of having the picture. If a person wanted to take that picture and then print it out, you go to a shop and have it printed. You have something that is permanent, and that would go back. That would seemingly be the same as will be similar at least to making a drawing itself. Okay. What about photographs of people? This is something that the poskim talk about as well. So we said yesterday that when it comes to, mentioned already today, when it comes to people, it's more lenient because there we're more worried about a 3D picture, whereas a 2D picture, according to many, is going to be okay. And that is why the vast majority of the poskim and the vast majority of Gedolei Israel allow for photographs of people, allowed themselves to be photographed. When the camera was first invented, there were those who were stringent. There are some who are stringent about it. Rav Ovadia Yosef writes that in Shivat Porat Yosef, the minhag was to be mekel, except for one of the Roshei Yeshiva, Rav Ovadia Hadaya, Shut Yaskil Avdi, wouldn't allow himself to be photographed. When they had the photos, he was always missing. So he wasn't there. But we've seen many pictures of Gedolei Israel, of Rabbanim, right, throughout the last few generations. And either you would say, because again, the 2D picture for a human form we're not worried about, or you'd say that many times it's not a full image, it's not the complete image of the person, that's okay. I don't discuss video in terms of this. I was thinking on the way before the shiur as well. Nobody has ever, we haven't heard anybody raise the question that if you take a video of somebody who's giving a shiur, what about the fact you are making an image of that person? But that certainly would fall into the categories of education and lorot, and nobody has seems to have an issue with that. So that is in terms of photographs. The general minhag is to be mekel about that. Where sculptures or images of people does come up. So again, in terms of sculptures, the Chochmat Adam told us that the main leniency we have today is that when it's clear to everybody that you're not worshiping it, that these are not idols, they're just ornaments, decoration, that would be okay in terms of owning them, not in terms of making them, but in terms of owning them. So the question was going to discuss about dolls. A person has dolls for children's dolls, which are the image, which are a form of a person. I mean, right, that would be, there is maybe in terms of making them, they might be more questionable. In terms of owning them, that would seem to be okay. But many poskim write as well that it's better that it shouldn't be a full form of a human being. So if the doll is missing a hand or missing something, that would be better. I don't recommend to anybody to go to a 5-year-old and take the doll and rip it apart. That would not be a recommended course of action. But what comes out of this is something very interesting. Is that owning the doll is, even if it was to be questionable, is less questionable than making it itself. So what happens when, inevitably, and it does happen, that the doll's arm or the doll's hand or leg or whatever it is gets ripped off, then if a person is to go and to fix it, so then you're actually making it, you're making that form again. So it would be better if it falls apart to leave it fallen apart, and that would be less of a question. Okay, I'd count for today.